said, be brave, my son, I'll be home soon. The boy held on to hope till he got that awful news. And as they folded up the stars and stripes, 21 guns pointed towards the sky. As the shots rang out, he flinched a little each time. Then a soldier in his best dress walked up to him, and you know the rest.
This show is brought to you by Operation Encore. Operation Encore is a 501c nonprofit that is helping change the lives of our veteran community. Let me tell you a little bit about what they do. They are helping veterans get into the music industry. They're helping them learn the business, get songs recorded, and not only that, making dreams happen. You know, most of these veterans have got the idea of becoming a musician way before they went into the military. And Operation Encore is filling that gap from while they served in the military and helping them change their lives and live out those dreams. Operation Encore is a nonprofit. You can go to this link right there and click on it. Give them a little help. Hit that donate button. Follow them. Learn about all the great things that Operation Encore does for our veterans. Hey, welcome everybody. It's Spirits and Stories with Donald Dunn. So only 2 times in this 3-year season have we had a repeat guest. And I say that because I'm very picky about who we bring on. But when I have a good time and I connect, I always love to have them back. So today we've got best-selling author Dick Wybrow. He has got a unique style. I still laugh about the book that we talked about last episode. I'm not going to spoil it. You have to go back and watch it to find out, but I'm sure we'll get into it. So let's bring on Mr. Dick Wybrow.
Donald, man, just fantastic talking with you again, brother. And speaking to you from New Zealand, if people aren't familiar, it's down under, down under. It is the barnacle of the planet, to use a Navy parlance. But no, it's we're way down here. I forget how far away we are sometimes. Yeah, so much so that I'm, as I've said before, I'm in the future. Right now, it's tomorrow where I am, and it's cold. And it's New Zealand's version of cold, and it's rainy, but it's still lovely. It's a lovely, green, beautiful place, getting greener by the second with all the rain coming down.
Yeah, y'all are on opposite season. So when it's summer here, it's winter there. Am I right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks. That part sucks because not for people who grew up here, right? Because I'm used to like a Christmas time where it's cold and, there's something special about that, right? Because over the Christmas holidays, you want to be with family. And when it's cold outside, you got to be inside. And so you're forced to be family a little bit. And here it's just sunny and you go to the beach and they've got these adverts here of like Santa Claus on a surfboard wearing shorts and stuff like that but it's got to be weird for them in a way because, all our, It's a Wonderful Life or Home Alone or any old movies and that's celebrating Christmas. None of them do it in the summertime. They've got to feel a little bit left out, is what it is. But so no, it's great.
Yeah. I had a guest on here. She's from Australia. And she's like a world champion kite surfer.
Oh, right.
And so she flies to Alaska for the wintertime because it's summertime down there.
Right.
And so she hops back and forth when summer in Alaska. She moves back. And I said, man, that sounds like paradise. I hate the summertime.
That is an accent. The Aussie accent is one that can hit you like a sledgehammer. And it's like the U.S., right? You meet somebody from Seattle, you meet somebody from the Northeast, you meet stuff from Texas, from Georgia, from Missouri, and it's all very different. But every now and then you meet. I'm casting aspersions at all. None of that towards my Aussie brothers and sisters. But every now and then you'll just see this beautiful woman, like just stunning woman, and they're like, "How are you today?" It's like, holy cats! What? How did that come out of that? Oh, lovely to see you. This is the worst accent. I apologize. I can't do an Aussie accent. I won't try. But it's not that it's bad. It's just you weren't expecting that.
Yeah.
It's, and this is a proven fact. And I only say proven because I saw it in a headline one time and I never Googled it to find out if it's true. So I take it as proven fact that the Aussie accent is actually the derivation of that comes from the intense drinking culture in Australia. And that's why they sound like they're drunk. All the time when you talk to an Aussie, he just sounds like he's drunk the entire time. It's because his grandfather and all that, they were drunk, and that's how they spoke. And eventually, the kids picked up on that drunken accent, and that's how they speak today. I don't know if that's true.
I just thought it was like a rebellion against Britain. You're like, we're not even going to use your accent. It's our English.
But supposedly, I mean, we're always influenced. Like, my father is New Zealander. That's why I got into New Zealand, because I'm half Kiwi citizen by descent. And so when I came knocking on the door, they used to pushing us away. They're like, oh, we got to let that one in. He's got papers. And but when he was in the U.S., because I grew up all across the United States, born in Canada, but grew up across the United States, people thought he was from Boston because that same sort of those sort of softer vowels and that sort of stuff from I guess, England and the old country and that kind of still remain there. And so a lot of people thought he was from the Boston area.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think I've ever talked to anybody that, was native from New Zealand. So it is quite interesting, man.
Yeah. And there's a different style. Like, you've got the southern, those from the South Island, or what they call the main island. Those, it's funny when you step in and then you find these rivalries and stuff that have been going on for ages and ages. So the South Island, the main island down there, the fewer people live down that way because, Auckland is on the North Island and that's where there's 1 million plus people, that sort of thing. But yeah, the South Island accent has a bit of a roll to their R's and stuff like that. And so you can hear them. Yeah. So it sounds a little bit different. And it looks very different too. South Island looks a little bit like Scotland in a way. And I know most of us haven't been to Scotland, but apparently when Scottish people came over, then, oh, that looks good to me. And they just all came here in droves because it looked like home.
Yeah, I get it, man. Exactly. So how have you been doing, man? How's the writing world treating you?
Good, really good. In fact, when you and I first spoke some time ago, I think I just finished or was near the tail end of finishing book 2, I think at that point, but I just published book 1. I am now working on edits for book 5. So give you an idea about the intense writing schedule over the last couple of months. It's been full on, and it's been an amazing experience. It's just sort of hanging out in this world, which has just been a joy, but also a lot of work, And I'd like to talk the positive side of it, but it's also soul crushing and anxiety inducing, and especially in book 5, because now I've got so many people sort of invested in the story, books 1 through 4, and this is the end of the series. And I really want to get it right. And so there's a bit of that where I'm really worried, man. Not everyone's going to love it. That's the thing. I have to accept that. But it's coming to an end. According to the characters in my head, this is coming to an end. So book 5 is coming out here on September 23rd. So I'm just hammering away to make that happen.
Is there, by chance, after this, any chance of a sequel for some zombies on Viagra?
You're talking about the Swordsman. The Swordsman was such a funny experience for me. I put that book out, and I think I probably told you that story a bit about how some of that came to be based on my wife sort of daring me to do it. Because up to that point, I'd written thrillers. I thought it worked out the market and everything. And so I just wrote something that was nuts. It's nuts. It's an insane story. It's, in a nutshell, basically there's sort of, it's not quite the zombie apocalypse. It's sort of like that sort of mid sort of space of zombie apocalypse in the Swordsman, to where people are still kind of going to work. The zombies are still out there. But so what happens is the main character ends up getting bit. He gets infected. He's going to take his own life, and he goes to a CVS Goes in there, takes a handful of pills and downs them. He thinks he's taking some sort of sedative, and instead he's taking ED medicine. But because he's taking the ED medicine, that has a particular effect on him, sliding a little bit of blood away from his brain. And because of that, he's able to stave off the effects of the zombie apocalypse, or the zombification of himself. So he becomes this anti-hero as long as he keeps popping these pills, and he gets a small group of folks with him who all take the pills as well. I only mention that because, yes, that sounds totally bizarre, insane, and nuts.
Yes, it does.
And it was a #1 comedy book in 2012. In December of 2012. And so that was the sort of thing that convinced me that rather than trying to write to the market, rather than trying to work at all those bits and pieces out there, this will sell, that will sell, I just did what was inside of my head, embraced that, and just ran with it. And so now 12 years later, I've got 15 books. I got the Hellink series. I got this series I'm wrapping up, and they're all nuts. And I admit to that. My insanity on the page, and apparently people seem to be digging it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, this particular book, Kane, it's about a wolf were, right?
Yeah, so it's a wolf were because it's, as people call it, it's like a reverse werewolf. Normally with werewolves, there's a dude out there hanging out in the forest, as dudes do, and they get bit by a werewolf. Down that guy turns into a werewolf when the moon comes out. And so I got it in my head and I wasn't like, that's the funny part. It's not like I said, I want to prescribe this. This is the idea I had. I want to construct this. It all just kind of sort of flows into you, right?
Yeah.
And as I'm getting older and older, and I'm getting older every day, from what I understand, I'm starting to realize that there are things beyond me. And so wherever these gifts are coming from, and I assume, I'm not going to say it's God, just simply because I don't want him to take the heat. But but the inspiration obviously is coming from somewhere. And so I'd come up with this idea that it was a wolf. Kane starts as a wolf, gets bitten by this guy who's infected with this particular virus. The next day, Kane wakes up, he's a 6'7" French Canadian. He grows into that. And then when he goes out into the moonlight, if it's a full moon, he turns into a werewolf. And this, Donald, this is where I did sort of insert myself, because I'm sure I've told you this before, but for those who hadn't seen that conversation, I got selfish in that way as a writer, because now when I write as somebody who's like writing to just kind of have fun and enjoy myself, I didn't want to wait the 28, 29, 30 days for my main character to turn into some sort of werewolf creature. What I decided was I wanted to have more fun along the way. And I can't be the first person who ever thought of this, right? Werewolves always, the guy turns into a werewolf, the woman turns into a werewolf only during the full moon. Well, why is it just the full moon? Right. Yeah. And so I started to think, what about lesser moon phases? What might he turn into then? And so I started to think, what's a lesser wolf? That's a dog. So if it's a quarter moon, half moon, whatever it might be, he turns into various sizes of dogs. And once I had that, I ran with it, and I've had a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun with it, and people seem to dig it.
Yeah. I mean, so like the little slit moon, that's a Chihuahua, right?
Exactly. And, and that's something, and no spoilers at all, but that's something that he doesn't even realize. He just knows he's turning into these random dogs all the time, unless it's the full moon. And it's his partner, Imelda, who's like this former criminal who he hires her to drive, because the one thing he can't do, he can't understand, he can't get reading. That doesn't make sense to him. His wolf brain can't get around that. And driving, he's a terrible, terrible, terrible driver. So she was like a former getaway driver. So he hires her, but throughout the series, she becomes more and more increasingly invested in this quest to get him back, turn him back into a wolf so he can return to his pack. And so, it's fun. And, and the fun part of it, as I started writing it, I started to get a lot of, readers and viewers on the Facebook and all that sort of thing. They would say, here, do my dog. Here, do my dog. They're pitching their breeds to me. Yeah. And I started to realize more and more, all these breeds have different personalities. Like Goldens are sweet. They're lovely dogs. Yep. But I wanted to sort of stay true to the characters. So it wasn't just he turns into this golden retriever or something, and then the next day when he's back into a human again, that's all done. He actually carries some of those traits for each one of these creatures he turns into as he goes along. And this sort of causes a bit of conflict within him. So yeah, it's fun. It's a real kick to write the series. I'm going to miss it.
He would enjoy the trait he carries from being a Chihuahua then, because they hump everything. So
Yeah, but also that sort of manic sort of like, because he's pretty stoic for the most part, right? He considers himself as a bit of an alpha,
right.
and Chihuahuas are, and so he gets a little bit of that inside of him, and he's kind of disgusted with himself when he's all this sort of very excited about everybody. It's a kick. It's a real kick.
That is awesome, man. Well, not to say I have accomplished anything, but I have released my first book.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah.
Congratulations, man.
Yep. I finally, took me a year and some odd months, but I finally got my little book out there, my little shade of fame, and
Right.
it is about this guy, me, and
Right.
just talking about my time of war. It started out as just a letter to my kids. That's where
Sure.
it all started from. Was just to give them an idea of things I went through, and my daughter asked me to publish it, so I did.
Oh, is that ever great?
Yeah, man.
That's a great device too, because you're speaking one-on-one to somebody,
Yep.
and I think that's something that, because I have a good number of authors come to me and ask me for advice and that sort of thing, like, how do you write this? And really it's whatever works for you in the end, it comes down to it.
Right.
But you do have to remember that somebody who's a reader or listening to an audiobook, that's an individual sort of thing.
Yep.
You're not on stage. It's not like television or stage work, whatever. It's more like radio in that sense. And I was in radio for a dozen years or so. And so that was great training for me, I suppose. But yeah, that writing a letter is a great way to really think about writing, because you're writing it to one reader. It's just for that one person that's enjoying it at that time. Congratulations, man. And books are not hard or not easy to do. So that's great.
It is not. I will tell you, I did not have any idea what I was taking on. So my hat's off to you to be able to write series and book after book after book, because I'm gonna tell you, if I got 7,000 words down, I thought I did something that day. Because
you are doing something that day. That's
tough,
good. I would almost, as funny as you mentioned it, because every time I get into a book, the beginning, especially the beginning, you're like, oh my God, what have I done? This is just, I can't do this. Every book I do this, I can't do this. I'm a complete fraud. And I get done. And it's a little bit like I've heard childbirth sort of, described, that if women could remember the pain, they would never have children again. But somehow you forget about all that emotional pain and physical pain, emotional when it comes to writing. And then you go in to start the book again. You go, oh yeah, that's right. This is anxiety inducing and soul crushing. I forgot about this part of it. Yeah, that's great, man. Great to hear it.
Yeah, man. So I have to ask, because I struggled through this part, and I think almost all authors are going to agree. The worst part is editing, right?
Well, I would say the first couple of times that I had to do it, I definitely felt that way. And I'm in editing now, and I'm putting it off. I did a little bit. They're like, it is exhausting, but there is a moment, and this is a bit more to inside baseball kind of when it comes to writing. But I really believe when you're writing that first draft, it's terrible. Most first drafts aren't very good. Almost every first draft is crap, and you can hear any author tell you that. And as you start to write, I really believe a lot in the subconscious, and how the subconscious is back there, that's sort of the hard drive back there working stuff out. So as you start editing, you're polishing it up and you're making it better. And there is a moment, at least it is for me, usually about a third the way through, sometimes longer, where I really start to enjoy. It's too strong of a word, but I get a lot of pleasure from the editing, because I know it's getting better. I know the first draft blew, and now it's getting better. And so there is a great joy knowing that, okay, now the book's finally coming together. Because like in the fourth book, I had some sort of storyline in there in number 4 that I didn't feel great about. I was like, this is too simple. I don't like this, the A to B on this. But 3/4 of the way through the editing, something just popped up. Something came into my head, and that's sort of like, the subconscious working the bits and pieces out. And through the editing process, I could just go and sort of retrofit it and go back in and insert that instead of the other thing I didn't like. So the editing makes it better. And it's just sort of the thing that I try and remind myself, for as much as it can be daunting. Because, right now I've got 105,000 words I got to get through, that I want to cut that down to around 90 or so. And it's not just cutting those words out. It's just making sense of the mess I've put onto the page.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's something I didn't expect when I started going through this process. So I did my first book. I did a lot of things terribly, and that's to be expected. Things that cost me a lot more extra work than I had to do. So like, you shouldn't edit while you're writing that first draft.
Some
That was,
people do.
yeah,
Some people do.
it didn't
There's
work
a
for
good
me.
number. Yeah, you got to find out what works for you. But there's some people, and I agree with you. I can't do it that way. But there's some people. The first thing you do in the morning is they edit what they wrote the day before, and I'm just not capable of doing that. I get too lost in it.
Yeah, yeah, because you have to think about it in a different perspective, right? You know, while I'm doing that writing, I kind of was replaying my life through myself again, you know, and
Yeah.
looking kind of from the outside, judging myself as I was writing about this guy that I'm watching, you know. But
Right.
once you start editing, that changes, because now
Yeah.
I'm thinking more about, did that make sense to me, and would it make sense to somebody who didn't know me? And that's
Right.
where cutting the words down and clearing up
Right.
some of the transitions becomes a very important part.
No, you write like I do. You know, I try to keep myself in that zone, that sort of real creative zone,
Mhm.
where that's, flow state, as I've heard people call it.
Yeah.
And I find that when I drop into editing, some of that flow state, it kind of trickles a bit at that point, because
Yep.
you got to be more constructive. You got to be,
Yep.
I was talking with somebody just the other day about the humor, because these books allegedly are funny. But even if there might be a joke or a line or a scenario in a book that I'm writing that if it doesn't actually serve the character or the storyline, I take it out.
Yeah.
And you only can do that in editing. I mean, you take it out, you can potentially use it somewhere else. But I have
Yeah.
plenty of stuff that sort of floats down from the transom into my brain that I really love and I think are funny. But if it doesn't work in the scene, for as much as I'd love to keep it in, I just cut it out. And that's hard to do. And you got to do that in editing.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm gonna tell you, so I'm writing my first fiction book,
Great.
and I've taken on another project with another author for our little nonprofit that we do.
Oh, great.
And I love, compared to writing about myself, I love the feeling of writing this fiction book, because I got to not just like create these guys. It wasn't like I went through and said, well, I think he'd look good with brown hair. I mean, I became like, I was talking to these people like they were real people, and just how they showed up in my head is how I put them on paper.
Yeah, sure. And they are you. I mean,
Yeah.
those characters are a facet of who you are.
Yep.
And like I mentioned, the radio side, when I used to do radio, my character, a person who was on the air, his name was Dick Danger. And I have full apologies for all of that. I wouldn't Google that necessarily, because I don't know what you might come up with those Google results. Probably nothing you want in your Google search history. But that sort of thing also taught me this idea of like Kane is a part of my brain, and Imelda is a part of my brain, and so are all the others, Gregor and Doc and all these other people. So it's a fun way to take that part of yourself and sort of amplify it up a little bit.
Yeah.
All of them are inside your head, and that can be daunting and comforting at the same time.
Yep. Absolutely, man.
Well, good luck with the fiction, brother. That's great.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. So getting back to Kane, right? And now you're in, when you started this book, like you said, there's that anxiety, but
sure.
When you started this book, did you say, okay, I know this is the last one. I know this is it.
I knew book 5 was going to be the last one. And that comes down to the characters.
Right.
Initially, when I first started writing it, I thought maybe I'll do a trilogy. And that was sort of the idea behind it. And Podium came by. They said, hey, we want to pick this up. And they have done the audiobooks for the first 3. But as I was writing their stories, and it felt like actually 3 isn't quite right. And that was not something that I sat back and said, oh, I want to write more books and make more money out of the books. If I want to make more money, I'll write 15. I'll write 25. Because I know I can keep selling these books. But it's the sort of thing where I know that this arc was something, and the development of these characters, 5 felt right. Especially because when I started to write book 3, which initially, like I was saying, felt like that was going to be the last one, the entire book became something. It's sort of like at least 70% of the book is this one particular thing, which did not end end the series. And so, yeah, so coming in when I first started, I had an idea about what I was going to do. And this is all my writing is the same way. And you'll find this with fiction, depending on how you write. But I have some ideas about what I'm going to do. And then the characters have different ideas. And I would equate that again to, the idea of, how we make choices in our life to some extent. Like I have this plan, but then God goes, nah, that's not what we're going to do. It's really neat that you think you're going to be doing that. That's great.
Yeah.
Keep doing your thing. But here I'm going to make this other thing happen.
Yep.
And so that's how my characters are with me to a great extent. I have a bit of a plan. I have an outline of what I want to do, but I wholly listen to my characters. I know how flaky that can sound to people who don't write, but I listen to these sort of voices and stuff in my head, and they sort of guide me down the path. And they've decided that book 5 is the end. They didn't literally come out and say book 5 is the end because
come back.
that is insane. That would be insane. But the story has a natural ending. And I've had, people that like the series and they say, hey, listen, I mean, does it have to end at 5? And all this, they say, well, this chapter of this ends at 5. And if there's going to be more, I don't know how that would happen. But if there were going to be more, then the characters will tell me that.
Yeah. And who knows, maybe they'll tell you to start another series called Enoch and we'll just do it backwards, man.
Exactly right. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It could be something, and there's plenty of opportunities, and they weren't built in, but I take a look and I've had some suggestions from some readers about, because there's about a year or so that, that we don't know what happened for the most part with Kane when he ended up leaving British Columbia and until he meets Imelda. So who knows? Maybe there's some short stories or novellas in there I could do. Who knows? We'll see. Yeah. It's all going to come down to what Kane wants to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do get what you're saying about, your characters speak to you because as you build their background, you start learning their personality. And then all of a sudden you write something, you're like, would he really say it like that? Would he put it a different way? And so, yeah, you do become one with them. And it's just like your best friend. You're like, man, are you feeling okay? You don't normally talk like that,
Right. Yeah. No, I'm actually, it's almost a trick in a way to say that I'm a humor author, because I don't, for the most part, no, there are mechanics to stuff, but I don't sit down and say, I'm going to write something funny now. It's just stuff that comes to me. It's stuff, there's these gifts, I may have said this before. When I was in radio, I had the great pleasure of interviewing Tom Petty, the Heartbreakers. And he described songwriting as these little gifts that come down. And for me, that's what the writing is and what the humor is. I mean, I had a line, ended up using it in a promo thing for book 4. And it was just a short collection of lines together that made me laugh. And I got up and I went to my wife, here, listen to this. But it's not like I sat down and wrote it out. It just comes into my head. And it was a conversation between Imelda and Kane that made me giggle. And so I'm like the first reader. So it's something that makes me laugh. And as long as it fits into the story, it stays. And so, so I feel like I'm cheating sometimes because I know people really struggle with writing humor. And I actually just had somebody in the last 24 hours say, I've read so many different fantasy books, some claiming to be funny. Yours is actually funny. How do you do it? And all I can say is, I don't know. I understand the constructs of humor. I understand that because I did stand-up comedy for years in the radio and all that stuff. I understand how sometimes if I get delivered a bit of a line or a scene or something, I know how to tighten that up to make it a bit better, usually by shortening it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But for the most part, all the humor just kind of comes to me and I don't really try.
I think a big part of it, right? I do understand with comedy, there is a format to it. There is a timing and there's a way to lead into your punchline and the whole bit. But if it doesn't start out authentic, then, it's not going to have that hit that it normally would. And that's where your stuff comes from. It's authentically you.
Yeah, if it feels like you're inserting something, because I've known some writers that will think of a funny scene or a funny moment or something, and they try and jam that into stories. And I feel like when I'm reading it, I can always sort of feel that. I can sort of infer that from what I'm reading. I don't know if that's the case. And when it comes to writing humor, there are sort of patterns and structures and this sort of thing. But usually it's just about understanding two things. One is tightening it up getting rid of any of the extra, if a word or a sentence within that, unless it's a pacing thing, if it's not helping serve the moment, the joke, the scene, you just cut it out, get rid of it. And the other thing is your exit ramp. As an old talent coach used to say to me, it's like, don't belabor it. Do the line, move on, because that's when it's funny. If you kind of, you know what I hate the most? I'll read, and I read a lot, but I'll read something and then there'll be characters that laugh, almost like the author is inserting a laugh track. And I've read this dozens of times, where an author will have a funny moment or what they believe is a funny moment. And no slight to them. It's just they find it's a funny moment. And the characters are laughing so hard they're wiping away tears. Like, I don't need that. Don't give me all that. You're telling me I should find it funny. I guess they find it funny, but that doesn't do anything for me. Right. So if I feel like they're inserting a laugh track to make me think that that's funnier than it actually is.
Okay, so note, get rid of chapter 2 in my new book. Got it. Okay.
I just, but here's the thing. All rules are meant to be broken. If in that laughing, that tells you something about the character, because sometimes laughing can be nervous laughter, if that's adding to the character. But if all you're doing is trying to support this idea that was a funny joke, I think it's much funnier when a line is dropped and then it's on the page, nobody addresses it. Unless it's like, maybe Imelda, if Kane tries to do something funny on purpose, he's going to fail at that. Although he's extremely funny when he doesn't try. Right. But when Kane tries to do something funny on purpose, and Imelda can turn around and just kind of say like, so that's your version of humor. So this is funny to you. See, then that becomes funnier because she's calling him out.
Yep. And in my book, I've got a couple different sections where one of the guys is a practical joker, kind of a funny guy. And then there's a more serious female that's on the team, and she finds some of his humor annoying. So she'll give that annoying responses to his jokes, and that'll kind of make some of the other guys chuckle, because they're annoying her. And so, I do get what you're saying. If you have to tell the people to laugh, I believe Joe Biden said it best, when he tried to tell a bunch of Marines a joke and nobody laughed. And he said, "You're supposed to laugh, you dumb bastards." It didn't go well for him, but
no, yeah. No, if it's funny, it's going to be funny. I've tried, and I don't know if it's just 2024, but we've tried to watch 2 comedies in our house here. One a series and another one a movie. And 15 minutes in, we're like, did that say comedy? And that's not I'm not trying to be mean. It's like, there's nothing funny about this. There's no jokes. And there's not even funny scenarios. I don't know if something's changed in 2024. I haven't seen anything funny in a long time. Yeah. And maybe it's because we're too nervous about trying to be funny. Maybe there's people are afraid of offending. I don't know what it might be.
I think that the movie sets are still kind of coming out of the COVID timeframe. And the reason why I say that is because I've never seen so many comebacks get relaunched at the same time. You've had Ghostbusters and all, I think Beetlejuice is getting ready to come back out. And it was almost like, oh shit, we didn't think we'd ever go back to work. Now we got to actually come up with something. Well, just throw some rerun stuff out there until we get some new stuff. And I think that
part of that is supposedly you have a built-in audience, right? If you're going to do Roadhouse, all the oldsters like me that remember the original Patrick Swayze, we'll check it out because we, even though Roadhouse was a goof fest, it's a sort of thing that, we'll check it out. And so like Ghostbusters Afterlife or whatever this last one was, Frozen Empire, whatever, terrible. I didn't even finish watching the movie. It was just not enjoyable at all. And so, although I did like Fall Guy, we got a kick out of Fall Guy. And I think the only thing I can work out why that worked in part is because the actors made it work. That might be part of what we're missing right now. When you take a look at the great comedies of the past, no slight against the actors who were on these comedies, but the actors that made that work really knew the craft, and the lines were written really, really, really well. And I think for me, and I don't know if you had the same experience, but I enjoyed the Fall Guy to some extent because was it Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt or something like this? I don't know if it was Gosling, but the point being
Fall Guy.
But that movie had nothing to do with the series. The only thing really that was similar was the fact that the guy was a stunt person who kind of solves a crime, is basically the idea behind it. But then I looked into it. Yeah, I looked into it a bit, and apparently the director was a former stuntman. So what, and the screenwriter, because they also combine the screenwriting skills. And I think what made that work better was because the person who was writing or constructing this bit of art loved this world. And I think that came across. And that's the only real thing I can get in my head, is where the others, like you mentioned, the Roadhouse and the Ghostbusters and now Beetlejuice, who knows what that's going to be like. But this person with Fall Guy loved this world, loved these people, loved these characters, loved the art of stunt mending, and because of that love, it comes out in the film. And I think that's what makes it enjoyable. If you love what you're doing, like if you love what you're writing, some people are gonna love that. You can feel that joy coming out of the page.
No, I completely agree. And I haven't seen the movie The Fall Guy, but if he's got that same brown truck, that little short body truck, I'm in.
Yeah. I felt the same thing about the A-Team. The A-Team way back when, was it a decade plus ago?
Yeah.
Then they crush it within the first half hour or so. But the same sort of thing, it was still sort of true to that, and had some amazing performers in there. So that really makes a big difference.
Absolutely. So what is the chances that maybe Kane becomes a movie?
It's funny you say that. I don't want to put a kibosh on anything, but we'll see. All I'll say is we'll see. There is interest, and there's significant interest, and since that interest, there's been more interest, and so I think for whatever reason, like I mentioned before, at no point did I ever think I was going to be writing a book that has a werewolf in it. If you said to me literally, a year and a half ago, you're going to be writing a book of the werewolf, it's like, I don't even read werewolf books. I don't. It wasn't something. I thought the idea was neat. But now there seems to be this big sort of surge. And so apparently I've hit some wave or something, because, zombies are kind of burnt out. We've done the vampire thing to death. Yeah. So apparently I'm in the right spot right now for the werewolf stuff. And it's unusual because, it's got the dogs in it and because it got the humor. So the long answer to that question is we'll see. And if I hear something in the next little while, I'll give you a heads up. But fingers crossed, just because I think it is a fun story. And I think, and it's not just, the success of the story would be great. I would love to have that sort of thing. But I also think, there's a lot about within this story that comes really deep in my heart, this idea of finding your pack. And you know what this is like to some extent, obviously, with your military brothers and sisters. When you sort of find your pack, that's life on a whole new level. Yep. And so almost like a literal finding your pack. Within this story, and Mel and Kane kind of become this pack of two. They become really tight, and I really think life is about finding your pack in some way. And we're all still searching, but when you find those people that really mean a lot to you, when you find your pack, and that's sort of what the story celebrates. Celebrates really finding the people that you aren't related to. Those sort of strangers out in the world that you happen to just come across, and something just clicks, and they're part of your pack. And that's just one of the great joys in life. And I celebrate that in the book.
Yeah, that's true. And you were not necessarily talking about blood. You don't have to be blood to be a part of the pack.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the new cool thing about real wolves, is that it is other animals, other wolves can just kind of blend in and become part of their pack. So absolutely. I completely, you're right. I do completely understand the importance. And that's one thing I love about what I do, is it constantly keeps me back involved with the veteran community, and that's my pack. So, yeah.
Hey man. And I'll tell you what, and this sounds really simple coming from someone like me, but my son was in the Army. Apologies for people that weren't. And then my father-in-law was Air Force. And so I've from a distance, I've seen that sort of thing. We were just watching something the other day that was just right in the heart of World War II. It was some sort of period piece in England, and it showed the struggle of this person that was going to fight against Germany at the time, and it was one of those times I really put myself in that headspace. And the people that do, the veterans and the people that in the armed forces that do that, I think that's a special kind of person. That is an amazing person that puts themselves forward to do that. I'm just so impressed. I am so impressed by the people that have done that and continue to do that all the time. Because I think it's a very special kind of person that can put themselves out in that particular way. And I know that a lot of folks may get involved for different reasons, but in the end, you're doing it to protect people. And it's an amazingly beautiful thing. It is amazing. It's an amazing group of people.
I appreciate that. And that's one thing I love about what I do, because I get to help them take that same attitude of, I don't quit. We're going to make it. We're going to figure this out, problem solve. And I get to help them take that and put that into their dreams, whether they want to become a writer, a musician, a podcast, or whatever, and help them build on those wins. So I think it's amazing, man. And if I would have known how hard writing was, I don't know that we would have had that program, but
but it's rewarding. It's, that's the thing. If it wasn't so hard, everybody would do it. It really what it comes down to. And for me, writing is a compulsion. Even if Kane never really took off, I still would have written the next book. And the book after that. It's just a compulsion. It's something that's really within me that I'm going to be doing, no matter who reads these things. And I just got sort of lucky on this series that people seem to like it.
Well, I can tell you the one thing I have learned is it is tremendously humbling when you put that much effort into something, right? And then people spend their own money and then still give you their own time to read it, and then even go a step further and take that time to give you the feedback of what they thought. And to me, that is just humbling that somebody was willing to do that. And I think that's the cool part of this all.
One of the greatest gifts I get from readers on occasion, and it feels almost like once removed or something, that they're not even speaking about something that came from me, because with the creative process, that sort of thing, that I'm a bit of a conduit for that. But I've had people tell me, like I don't know if I mentioned before, but I had one woman who came to me and said, my father was very ill, and my job wasn't going really well, but I came home every night and I was reading these books. And I had that bit of solace. And so she said, for as difficult as my day was, I knew I would come home for a couple hours every night. I could get lost in Kane and Imelda's world. And that kept my head straight. And that was something. I had another woman say that she has dreams about these characters, that they're almost like friends of hers. And that's an amazingly rewarding. Again, it doesn't feel real on my way. It's not something that I can completely take in. It's almost like somebody I know wrote this series and they're saying something nice about that person. It doesn't feel real. But to know that something that was created, that you were a part of, that something was created, that people actually, it matters to their world, because I've got books that matter a lot to me. Yeah. Growing up, I was a huge fan of Douglas Adams, and Douglas is since, passed. But if I ever met him, I would tell him he changed my life. Those books matter so much to me. Yeah. And to have even a small part of that effect on somebody, to lift their lives up a bit, or to help them out when things are kind of dark, that's a great gift from them to me, to be able for letting me provide that for them. It's pretty amazing. And I can't get my head around it entirely, but I'm very grateful and thankful that does that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I said, it wasn't something I thought of, and I didn't even know. I literally told everybody that when I released my book, I was going to put it in all the pharmacies next to the melatonin. That's what I told
Right.
But it was something I didn't expect, and it was, it made me feel good,
Yeah. So, no, it is. It's really rewarding. It's like you said, it's really hard to do, but in the end, it's very rewarding. I wouldn't trade anything for it. I love writing.
Now, I'm gonna be your agent here for a second.
Here we go.
If you make a movie, it has to be in your contract that you're just like Stephen King. Any of his books that turn into movies, he has to be in it. So you have to be somebody. Maybe it's a guy walking across the street, or somebody stealing a stereo or something, but you have to be a part of it.
If I got to work out who that might be, that would be fun to do. It's funny. I almost thought you were going to say the idea of having some creative control, and And I know there's some authors that want a lot of creative control, and others that write it off. I had the great pleasure to meet a guy named Max Brooks, who wrote World War Z.
Okay.
And his father's Mel Brooks, the Blazing Saddles and
Yep.
all that stuff.
Yep.
And I asked him at the time, because his book World War Z was being turned into a film. And I asked him, I said, how much input do you have? And he, as I'm asking the question, he's just shaking his head. He's like, He goes, I learned this from my father. He said, you know what? He's like, they give me the check, and I just like, if they want me to be involved in any way, but I know that whatever they do is going to break my heart in some in some way, because it's going to deviate from my story. But I don't know. I think that whoever does pick up Kane, and that might be happening, whoever does pick up Kane, I think they're going to be pretty true to the story. It's a very simple sort of story. It's not very complicated. For as complicated as it might sort of sound, they might add bits and pieces into it. But yeah, I wouldn't mind being a clerk. I wouldn't mind being a concierge or something like that. You know, bellhop or something. I wouldn't mind getting to the scene. That wouldn't be so bad. I'd be up for that. Yeah,
absolutely, man. It's just another piece of the trilogy that gets to become yours. It doesn't have to be a big part. It's just, I wrote the book. The people came from me, and I even got to be somebody in the movie too. So
yeah, I don't, it's like, what was it? It was Cameron Crowe, the guy that did Almost Famous. He appeared in he appeared in a Scott Frank film, Minority Report, I think. He's reading a newspaper, and no one would have recognized him. This other director from this other one, you're coming into this film. But yeah, those are neat little bits and pieces to be able to plop yourself into. Yeah. I'd love to be a bit of a part of it. And to be honest, I don't think I would want to, like Blake Crouch, if you're watching Dark Matter at all. He wrote the book many years ago, and he's also the showrunner. And I think he does a lot of the writing for the teleplay in that. And I think that takes a special brand of person to be able to do that, because to be able to take what you've done and then change the story, because it's got to fit into that TV medium.
Right.
Because for as much as, I love the bits and pieces and the Kane stuff and all where it came from and everything, is it wouldn't fit as is, obviously, into a television medium. And I think that's to put a different hat on and basically tear up your story and then sort of pick the bits and pieces out to put it back into a different format. That's pretty brave. That's pretty objective.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you're dealing with different senses now. So now somebody is physically seeing what this person looked like, physically hearing this person talk, and the imagination is gone at that point. I don't need to figure out what he looks like. I don't need to figure out how he sounds to me. That is done for me. And so it is harder. That's why I think everybody says, oh, the movie was good, the book's way better. Because and it's because the detail that you get to put into it kind of gets twisted with each person that reads it. Somebody may picture that person talking a little bit different way or different accent or something, but
when they turned the books into the audiobooks, I was somewhat nervous at the beginning, like what might they do with it? But Podium did an amazing job. Maria McCann plays Imelda, and then Tim Campbell plays Kane, and they're so brilliant. And I'm glad I had nothing to do with it. And, I had no input on that creative process at all. And I really loved all the things they did. And they did take it to a different level. It's the same story because they're reading the book, or they're performing the book, but it's a whole different dimension. And there's something about audio. I do love audio. I'd be fascinated to see what it looks like in sort of on the screen, like as you're saying, where everything's laid out a little bit more. But if the television series, or if it becomes a film, whatever it might be, Kane moving into that zone, if they could take any sort of guidance from what Maria and Tim and Podium did with the audiobooks, I think it'll be great.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I guarantee you there's probably a whole bunch of readers out there that if they watch the show, they're gonna be like, yes, it's coming back as a movie. Yes.
Yeah. That'd be fun. I get a kick out of it,
man. I think that would be a good time, man. Just hang out on the set and watch your work come to life.
Yeah.
Be a real cool thing, man. It is cool being an author. I don't consider myself an author, but
you're an author. You're definitely an author.
Well, I like to think that maybe from my podcast, I bring that author thought to it. I wrote my book for myself and for my family. And then after that, I enjoyed it. I guess I'm into that kind of punishment, and I decided to do it again. But it has been the other side of that. When I had somebody come to me and ask me to write a book about their son that was served and everything else, dude, it was humbling.
Yeah.
And she got that from seeing our Words from Warriors little thing on Facebook, and then she bought my book and reached out, and I thought, man, I don't know, that's a big tall ask, but it is. I was honored, and that's the other project that we're working on with, all of us authors are kind of getting together and putting our little spin and piece on it. And I think it'll do some amazing things.
That's great.
She's got a nonprofit in Alabama, and man, she's like a firecracker. She has got some big tall orders, man. But I ain't gonna say if, when she accomplishes it, she will have done some amazing things that even government agencies couldn't do. She's,
and we need people out there like that.
Yeah.
I know that, especially right now, that a lot of people feel pretty, nervous about 2024, about what's happening in the world, that sort of thing. And every time somebody says, "Oh, there's so much darkness," this horrible person here, horrible person here, it's like, yeah, but I think for every awful person out there, there's definitely a balance. There's all these angels we got running around. And I think it's great to focus on those people and give those people as much light as we can, which I'm glad you're doing. That's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Her nonprofit's called Dovetail Landing, 600 and some acres, I think it is.
Right.
$60 million project is what the total cost is to get it up and running. And I think she's somewhere around 15 million that she's raised. So, I mean,
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, she's doing some awesome stuff. And I think that's like you said, that's exactly what we need in the world, is to bring this balance back, because life is balance. If you can't say that you believe in the Holy Ghost if you don't believe in ghosts, and so you have to have that balance, good and bad, evil, good, it doesn't matter. And right now the balance is just shifted off a little bit, and people will come around, and next thing you know, we'll be balanced the other way again. And
I agree with you.
Yeah. What's the old saying? They say hard times create hard men create easy times create soft men, and we're just in a cycle, man. That's exactly what it is.
Well, any great creativity, to put it back on that, usually comes from, I don't want to say a place of pain. That sounds way too strong.
Mm-hmm.
But part of, my humor came from when, my interest in becoming a funny person, whatever it might be, that came from being sort of picked on as a kid. And my defense was being funny, because that was an amazing shield for me. And that gave me the power back. And so I may not have been as interested in comedy if it wasn't something that would just save my butt or prevent me from get my butt kicked. And so, would I prefer not to have bullies and that sort of thing when I was growing up? But yeah, of course, that would have been great. But that's not the way the world works. And in the end, some of that sort of intense pressure from these bullies who took a specific disliking to me, probably because I don't know what it is. Maybe I got a bit of a mouth on me. That's what I've been told, that I learned how to be funny to get myself out of those jams. And so, that negative and that sort of dangerous scenario helped me create a 55-year career now. Well, 45.
Yeah. And I've heard that more than once from the comedy era. They take their trauma and their pain and turn it into humor. And the veteran community does the same thing. I mean, we joke. I don't know how many times we had some close calls and we just turned around and laughed at it and said, "Holy crap, that was crazy," Yeah. And it's just, I guess that's the coping mechanism,
Yeah.
So I think it's big that we can do that as a community. It's awesome how the internet has finally done some amazing stuff. The books reaching more people now, the podcasts reaching more people, and in this creativity that happens, man, there's a lot of good that comes out of it. And I think that's just amazing. I'm honored to be a part of it, man. If I couldn't podcast anymore, I think I think I'd probably be sad, you know, because
I think a lot of people would be sad. I think a lot of people not having your energy and your spirit in here, man. So we're happy to have you, brother.
Hey, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. So all 2 listeners out there, you heard that, man. Y'all be sad without me.
You'd be surprised, man. You would be surprised sometimes. You know, I had somebody contact me from the Netherlands to ask me about the book, and I went through my records. I don't remember selling a book in the Netherlands. Did I sell a book in the Netherlands? I couldn't find the Netherlands on a map if I needed to. It's in that general area over there. It's quite small, but somebody said they'd read it. So you never know how when you send something out into the world, how it might affect somebody and how it might touch them, or might even, like I said earlier, it might make their lives just a little bit better for a short period of time. But that is gold. That's everything. So you never know.
Absolutely, man. Well, Dick, I'm gonna bring you forward, man. Give you the opportunity to tell everybody, you know, when does the pre-releases start and where they can get it and all that good sort of stuff, man.
It's it's up on Amazon, because that's for independent authors. That's where everybody's got to go. So you can take a look at the pre-order for book 5's on Amazon. If you haven't checked out the series, give Kane the first book a try. If you're busy like I am, I was just listening to an audiobook before we were speaking today. I listen to audiobooks while I'm working on the house or working on the motorcycle, working on the lawn. So you can check out Kane. It's an audiobook on Audible. I would recommend it. Those guys are great. Marie and Tim are fantastic. But book 5 comes out September 23rd, and if you dig it, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me what you think. So yeah, you can find it, or just go to the website. You just take my name, put in the website, dickwybrow.com, and there's a lot of information there.
Absolutely, man. And I will, as always, always have the links down there for you guys to make it real super simple. You just click on it. Look, I'm gonna tell y'all, man. Like I said, he's only the second person I've ever had come on, and my memory sucks. But I remember our interview from the first time. It's been several months, you know, and I can still remember the book that we talked about. And brother, you're just doing amazing stuff and knocking it out of the park, you know. So my hat's off to you, man.
Thank you. And keep going with the fiction stuff, you know, and feel free if somebody is looking to write a monster book or humor, shoot me a note, you know, and I'll throw a couple lines their way, or I'll give them some guidance. I'm very up for that. Just let me know how I can help.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, brother. Well, I'm going to throw the exit out. If you don't mind holding on for a few seconds, I'll put you in the green room, man, and I'll be right with you.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on. You guys have got to check out his books. I'm telling y'all, there is a long list. If you just put his name in Amazon, the server slows down because there's that much to open up. So make sure y'all are going to his website. Make sure you're going to Amazon. I will take the Kane series and I will also link that into the links too. So you're able just to click on it and go straight to Amazon and get his stuff, man. You will not regret it. Dick is an amazing man, an amazing author. And we were laughing before the show even started. So the comedy started sorry, y'all don't get to hear it. Tough. But he has me rolling, man. So he was the blessing to the end of a long day. So make sure y'all reward him. Follow him on social media. Follow him. Buy the book. Enjoy. Don't forget, don't let the day kick your ass. Kick the day's ass.